The Niger Delta in Nigeria is endowed with extensive freshwater swamps and tropical rainforests, which are rich in unique biological diversity. However, the delta is now one of the most polluted places on earth. Indigenous people in this region now believe that oil is not a blessing, but a curse.
Because people cannot go to fishing again, they can't go to farm again, because the oil has destroyed everywhere. Oil is not a blessing at all, rather it is a curse.
Hello, I'm Mubarak Kenya, and welcome to today's edition of Africa Today. As you heard there, some Nigerians believe oil is a curse because instead of bringing prosperity to the people, it has made them poorer, and not just that, but has also destroyed their environment. In our we are focusing on how Western multinationals have turned the world's third largest mangrove forests into one of the most polluted places on earth. In the second segment of our program, we shall discuss cars made in Africa. Yes, we are talking about African-made cars and efforts by local manufacturers to ensure that they produce good quality motor vehicles for African and global consumers. A Ugandan here could not hide her joy over her country's ability to manufacture buses locally.
Ugandan, I'm so proud. I feel so proud that my country can manufacture something like this. This is a very good step.
Of Niger Delta. In 2011, a groundbreaking report by the UN Environment Program, UNEP, on oil pollution in Ogoniland highlighted the devastating impact of the oil industry in the Niger Delta in Nigeria. The report made concrete recommendations for cleanup measures and immediate support for the region's devastated communities. According to environmentalists, over 10 years after a cleanup was urged for areas polluted mostly by Western oil companies in the Niger Delta, work has begun on only 11% of planned sites. Vast areas remain heavily contaminated, according to a new investigation by several NGOs. An NGO known as Friends of the Earth Europe says there is still no cleanup, no emergency health and water measures, transparency, and no accountability. This NGO notes that while oil companies like Shell spend millions greenwashing their image, many locals are being denied justice and continue to suffer from their pollution and negligence.
In January, a Dutch appeals court ruled that oil giant Shell's Nigerian subsidiary is responsible for oil pipeline leaks in the Niger Delta. The judgment is expected to set a precedent where other aggrieved persons in Nigeria and other parts of Africa will file complaints against oil multinationals. Now, a Nigerian environmental activist gives his reaction following the ruling by the Dutch court.
This is a victory for posterity because it means, therefore, that the people of the Niger Delta will not be for a ride any longer by the oil multinationals who have operated here with impunity and sheer disrespect of the values of the people.
Now, for more on the massive environmental degradation of the Niger Delta, we have contacted Dr. Ifesinachi Okafor-Yearwood, a lecturer in sustainable development at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. Thanks a lot for your time, madam. Now, tell us briefly, what is the current state of the environment at the Niger Delta?
Just to give you an example of how severe or the extent of this problem is such that since oil exploration and production started in Nigeria in 1958, more than 40% or at least of the mangrove of the Niger Delta has been oiled. And I'm giving this example of the mangrove because it is a very important area of vegetation that is important for people's sort of livelihood. But now they are no longer able to make a living from that. So, for example, the women might be able to pick periwinkles from the mangrove. And also the mangrove is a breeding ground for a lot of the species across Western Central Africa. And so with oiling, it's obviously mean that they're not able to either make a living from picking periwinkle, as an example, or that the breeding ground of fishery species is disturbed, which obviously collectively have an impact on the source of livelihood of the local population.
Thanks for that, Dr. Okafor-Yearwood. Now, the situation, as you explained, looks really grim. So who is actually responsible for cleaning up the Niger Delta following the massive destruction of the environment by companies extracting oil there?
Well, I think the first people that are responsible is the Nigerian government, because obviously, even though it is the fault of the multinational oil companies that they are not, one, respecting the environmental regulations that are put in place, or two, operating in the way that they would have operated if they were in their home countries. At the end of the day, the onus is on the government to set out laws and then be able to ensure that those laws are implemented or enforced. So that obviously brings us to what the responsibility of the government should be. But at the same time, given what is in the Nigerian regulation in terms of their environmental regulation, it is then the responsibility of the multinational oil companies or the local oil companies operating in the region to ensure that in cases of oil spillages, for example, they ensure that it's cleaned up and the environment is remediated.
For over 5 decades, oil and gas extraction has caused large-scale contamination of the water and soil in Niger Delta communities. The continued and systematic failure of oil companies and government to clean up hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of local inhabitants facing serious health risks, struggling to access safe drinking water, and unable to earn a living. Western multinationals appear reluctant to clean up the mess they created. Many residents are hopeless.
It's going to take about 30 years for the creek to be restored. So within that period, Shell have made billions of pounds from here.
Why are Western oil multinationals failing to take full responsibility in the cleanup of the Niger Delta while they have made billions of dollars in profits from the region?
I think it's not so much about Western oil companies. It is, unfortunately, now all the oil companies. So Western oil companies obviously started operating in Nigeria for a long time, and you could say that we are where we are today, unfortunately, because of the way they degraded the environment, historically, and have continued to degrade the environment. And I say have continued because, unfortunately, a lot of the places that's been affected by oil pollution, places like Ogoni, for example, places like states in the Niger Delta area like Bayelsa or other places have not necessarily received the remediation that it should. This whole idea of corruption playing a part and delaying implementation of certain projects or remediation that could have happened so many years is also something that continues is an issue.
Well, you have it there. Corruption is a factor in the delay in cleaning up the Niger Delta. Despite widespread criticism, the Nigerian government says it is on course to clean up the Niger Delta, and it launched the hydrocarbon pollution remediation project in 2017. The coordinator for the project, Marvin Dekil, explains here on the progress they've made.
The program is designed to achieve remediation of most of the impacted sites in the first 5 years. We end the first 2 years, and that means in the next 3 years we will be carrying out remediation of most of the complex sites across the region.
Now, Dr. Okafuri, is failure of the relevant government agencies responsible for the environmental mess in the Niger Delta?
The organization that is responsible, for example, for ensuring that oil companies, when there's been pollution, is able to either clean up, remediate, and compensate, do not have the relevant tools to actually make sure that, for example, when there's been an oil spill, that they can go to the site to check and verify. Then you know that there's a problem. There's actually instances where they rely on helicopters or transport provided by the oil companies to go and verify whether there's been a leakage or a spillage. There's also, it's not there's also, it is also the case that sometimes the organization responsible for enforcing or implementing the environmental laws rely on the oil companies for data on pollution. How is that even acceptable that you're relying on me, someone that is responsible for doing something wrong, to give me the data on the extent that I'm doing that thing wrong?
Now, Western oil multinationals have done little to help cleaning up pollution that deprived entire communities in the Niger Delta of their fishing and farming livelihoods.
We can't see no fish in this water because the water is stained with crude oil, and no living fish can be available to survive with this water.
The oil spills have destroyed vegetation and agricultural land. How has this affected food production in Niger Delta among the locals?
Well, it has affected food production and food security by reducing what is available. So, for example, in talking about the mangrove destruction, I talked about people that would usually make a living from periwinkle, and this is focusing on women and how different genders are also affected. Women that would usually pick periwinkle from the mangrove are no longer able to do that. So, for example, in the case of oil pollution in different places, that the fact that they are no longer able to do that means that that source of livelihood is gone.
How is the oil pollution impacting on the health of the local residents, and how are they coping?
The threat to their health security, because a lot of the water sources has been contaminated, and so you find that people's health is sort of going down, and they sometimes don't actually understand why, because they feel that where they are, they're not necessarily directly affected by the pollution, but then different tests, and there's a lot of scientific report out there, scientific paper that's been written about the contamination level in communities across the Niger Delta area. So even beyond the immediate economic and food security, there's also a risk to people's health, which is something that obviously the government needs to do something about. And I'm sure the companies operating in the region also have a corporate to also look into this.
Before we wind up, what urgent measures are needed to clean up the Niger Delta and save the people of this region who have endured suffering for decades?
It is very important that the government and the oil companies or the multinational oil companies listen to the people. It is also very, very important, and I cannot emphasize this enough, that yes, COVID have had an impact on the economy, and I know that not only Nigeria, but so many countries across West and Central Africa are so eager to tap into the potentials of their ocean economy. And with this comes the possibility or the chances of alienating the most vulnerable people, that is fisher folks in coastal communities.
A very stark Dr. Ifasinachi Okafor Yarwood that failure to ensure an all-inclusive sustainable development of Africa's natural resources will create grounds for the emergence of militant groups.
Hope that the innovations that will come out of this hub are going to be able to take us forward and really create the jobs that we need for our young people so that we can increase and improve.
Kenya's economic growth of near 6% in 2019 placed this country as one of the fast-growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa, which made this country a focal point in the east of Africa for business and technology cooperation with Iran.
Cars made in Africa.
Due to the rise in income levels of many African countries and the emergence of a middle class, the continent with a population of 1.2 billion is regarded now as the final frontier for the global automotive industry. Many multinationals have even established assembly plants in Africa. The market is highly dominated by the used car sales. Between 2018, the European Union, Japan, and the United States exported 14 million used vehicles worldwide, 40% of which went to African countries.
The UN Environment Program says used vehicles exported from richer countries are contributing to increased air pollution in developing nations and hindering efforts to mitigate the effects of climate change. Africa has for long provided the raw materials to feed the world's factories, but struggled to create a manufacturing base at home. But now things are changing. African automobile industry is rising by manufacturing durable and affordable cars. Some of the countries with cars that are fully produced locally include Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Morocco, South Africa, Uganda, and Tunisia. Uganda has gone a step further by manufacturing an electric bus to protect the country's pristine environment.
In addressing the mobility challenges we have in Uganda, right from congestion, transport-based carbon emissions, climate change, the infrastructure. And we see how, as Ugandans, we can create a comprehensive total solution for mass mobility within the country.
Tunisia is one of the countries with an indigenous car manufacturing industry. The Wallace car brand in Tunisia, founded by Giga brothers Zaid and Omar.
We contacted Zayed Guiga, one of the founders of the company, to get his insight on indigenous car industry in Africa. Thanks a lot for your time. Now, to start off, can you briefly tell us about your journey towards establishing your factory in Tunisia and the challenges that you faced?
We started small, and the most difficult part was not the finance. It was all the psychological barriers. Because, you know, when you create a brand and you create a car, it's about perception. Is it going to be secure enough? Are people going to believe in your brand? So there is a big psychological and emotional part in this, and also a legal frame. The legal frame did not exist in Tunisia, so we had to push the administration to explain them that we want to do exactly what they do in England since 120 years, like Morgan Cars, you know, small car manufacturer making less than 1,000 cars a year since 100 years. So this is how we explain. We wanted to start small but surely and go step by step.
African-made cars are facing a myriad of challenges, not least a popular perception that Africa can't produce a quality product on its own. Manufacturers have to work overtime to convince locals to buy locally produced motor vehicles. Gradually, and speaks here in support of a locally manufactured car model.
Now back to you, Mr. Guiga. Now, do Tunisians really believe in your brand?
We sell a lifestyle more than a car, and Tunisian want to, how do you say, to help this new brand to live and to have its space in the market. So it's very interesting. It takes a lot of time, and you have to be strong and be passionate during this 4, 5, or 6 years when you build your brand. So you have to have the right position, to stay coherent in this position, so people will believe in your brand. Otherwise, they will just buy something without emotion. And if you buy something with zero emotion, you have many competitors. If you make a new car brand based only on price and specification, it's good enough.
The requirement for vehicle production is that manufacturing needs to become more competitive. To succeed, African car manufacturers have to produce state-of-the-art vehicles, which can be used in the continent's terrain, where many regions still have few paved roads compared to other parts of the world roads. A Kenyan driver explains here reasons for selecting a locally made brand.
Because it's more affordable than the cars I'm using right now.
Mr. Guiga, now, is your car brand affordable for most Tunisians? And do they find it special?
It's really custom-made cars, okay? And also, it's the most affordable category. So it's a 2 doors convertible cars with a PSA engine, and it's the most affordable one. It's in its segment. Now it's 15 years. Now we are evolving for new. Next year and this year we will evolve. Thanks also to our supply chain that we have. I have to tell you also that we buy also some component from Iran, and we will make more affordable cars. So next year we will sell cars that are one of how do you say, a segment where the car are very affordable for normal Tunisian.
Now, cars made in Africa are clearly changing. Countries are manufacturing state-of-the-art motor vehicles. Uganda has gone one step further and set up Africa's first electric bus factory.
We believe in technology that offers the end user opportunities, not only in terms of functionality, moving people and their goods, but also opportunities to accessing cleaner environment.
Now, Mr. Guiga, you founded your factory in 2006, and the cars are now being exported to European countries. It must have been really difficult. What kept you determined in your way to have an African-Tunisian car which is now being exported to Europe?
We did not, and we still don't have the facilities and the test regulation. So the administration, which is the government, told us, if you make a Tunisian car, you will have to make it certified in Europe. So it was hard for us because it's expensive, and we succeed because the founders were passionate and also were hands-on. What does it mean? It means that we were involved in every process, in all process, until we start production.
Well, that's quite inspiring, extraordinary determination and a hands-on approach. So what are your plans for the future? Are you planning on new models or an increase?
And now we are going to have a bigger portfolio of cars in order to be at least in 3 segments, which are the utility vehicles for cities, small vehicles also for cities, of course our small SUV, and then we will make a sedan. So we are going to evolve in order to have bigger market share, but always keeping the same strategy as I told you, making small volumes, affordable prices, but not available for everyone. So yes, we will increase the production because we have more models, not because we are going to increase the production for every model.
The future looks bright for this determined Tunisian car manufacturer and other homegrown motor vehicle manufacturers in Africa. Now, here at Africa Today, we shall keep you posted on Africa's quest to industrialize and attain self-reliance using the immense youthful power in the continent. Well, with that, we come to the end of this week's edition of Africa Today. Do let us know what you think about our program, and on behalf of the entire Africa Today team, I would like to thank you all for watching. Take care and goodbye for now.